Or to the cloud. All right, so I'm going to share my screen and start at the top. Can you guys see my topic today?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, today I am here to talk about showing and not telling. That is a common thing I think that we all hear in even our junior high or high school writing classes. When you're given instructions, don't tell us, show us. So that's what I'm going to talk about today and break that down a little bit into what that means. There are many elements of craft, and this one is really about the words. And it seems sort of obvious, right, to be in a writing class and talking about the actual words. But I think a lot of times we emphasize the characters or the plot, and we are in a rush to get to the end and tell the story that we have to tell, but we also want to create an immersive environment for the person who is reading. So that's the angle I am taking today. I love this quote by Mark Twain. The difference between the right word and the almost right word is the difference between lightning and lightning bug. And what I really like about that is even in this quote, he is making a very interesting word choice by saying the almost right word, not the wrong word, because it's not the wrong word, but it's almost right. And the difference between the right word and really the most perfect word is where we get emotion from in our writing. So why does this matter? There are so many different ways to tell a story, right? From Hemingway, who is I marched up a hill, to I walked up a hill with beautiful flowers, and you still get to the top of the hill, but you get there differently. And why does this matter? Why do you think it matters? I'm just going to put that out there to you guys. What do you think the goal of good writing is?
To convey an idea simply and effectively would be my stab at it.
What does effective mean to you?
It's loaded.
They're not hard questions. Just, I mean, like when you read something, what do you want it to do to you?
For me, I want it to be evocative.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be immersed in the hill. Even though I love me some Hemingway. I do want to.
Yeah. What about you, Amanda?
I think, Matt said evocative. I think I want to feel something. I want to feel like what I'm reading is something I know, or if I don't actually know it, that it's being described so well that I can kind of feel it.
Yeah, I think I agree. And that's what I was trying to get at. And those are great answers. That really it's about an emotional impact. That, we read facts in a newspaper where journalists are reporting things that happened. And that's a transmission of information that is intentionally objective to allow you most of the time to draw your own conclusions. These are the facts, just the facts, ma'am. And but fiction writing, especially, which is my focus here, is really about evocative emotion. You both used, strong E words there, since we're talking about words, and it's about transporting into another world. Words are interesting because in comparison to things like film or television or theater, which you see with your eyes, you can see the image in front of you, a flower on a screen. But with writing, you have to process a word through the mind. So flower, what you might see on the screen is a daisy or a rose, and it doesn't have to be said to you because you see it. But if you say flower in a sentence, the reader doesn't know. They'd have nothing to look at. They have no point of reference. So what kind of flower? And that's that extra step that happens in reading and with words that make it so important for us to show as much as we can with our language what's happening. So I'm going to give you an example here. This is telling. Debbie was a very stubborn and completely independent person and was always doing things her way, despite her parents' best efforts to get her to conform. Her father was an executive in a dress manufacturing company and was able to afford his family all the luxuries and comforts of life. But Debbie was completely indifferent to her family's influence. So that is telling. This is a little bit about Debbie and her rebellion against her parents. But there's a lot that we don't know. So another way to look at this would be showing. Debbie would wear a tank top to a tea party if she pleased, with fluorescent earrings and ankle strap sandals. Oh, sweetheart, Mrs. Chittister would stand in the doorway, wringing her hands. It's not nice. Not who? Debbie would say and add a fringed belt. Mr. Chittister was artistic director of the Boston branch of Cardin and had a high respect for what he called elegant textures, which ranged from hand-woven tweed to gold filigree, and which he willingly offered his daughter. Debbie preferred her laminated wrist bangles. So I'd love for each of you to just take a minute to look at this and see if you can pick out 3 words that are showing words that really make the difference between the telling of Debbie being kind of a rebellious teenage girl and her parents being sort of conservative and uptight corporate business people, and this here. So if you could pick 3 examples and tell me what words made the difference and why. Or not just, it could be a phrase or a description.
Fluorescent earrings and ankle straps ring out to me as being very a faux pas in this affluent community, and I feel like that is juxtaposed with the like elegant textures and hand-woven tweed and gold filigree that really give this this society some texture.
Awesome. That's a great answer. It feels a little like, I don't know about you, but I went to middle school in the 80s and it was very Madonna-esque with the fluorescent. I was like thinking
Okay.
bracelets and wrist bangles and stuff. What about you, Amanda? Are there any words that jump out at you?
Well, I guess I would only add, Matt mentioned this hand-woven tweed to gold filigree, which already is quite a range, but it's certainly an extremely it's like a homogeneous range,
Yeah.
I think. And then the piece ends with the laminated wrist bangles, and that is something that I remember from my teenagehood in the late 80s. So, very different from the hand-woven tweed.
I also really like in this example, Mrs. Chittister wringing her hands, because it doesn't tell us that she's worried. It shows us she's worried by an action that she's taken. So thank you for that. Another way to do this, in addition to adding words that have senses and bring feeling to it, is to make comparisons. So bring it to life beyond, how it smells, how it felt, how it looked, but comparing it to something else. And here are a few famous examples. Metaphors are often used as a comparison or an example. All the world's a stage, all the men and women merely players. And so that's from Shakespeare. It's saying that basically, all the world really isn't a stage, but the point he's trying to make, literally, is figuratively, is that we all have roles that we play on them, and the world is going to revolve without us. In East of Eden, we have the word like, and that's a simile. Similes use like or as, so it's much more of a direct comparison rather than an indirect one, like all the world's a stage. He doesn't say the world is like a stage. He just makes the assumption. But here we're using the word like. Kate inched over her own thoughts like a measuring worm. And I think the word worm is so interesting in that, because you can almost see her going through the thoughts in her head. And then from The Handmaid's Tale, she uses as. Time has not stood still. It has washed over me, washed me away, as if I'm nothing more than a woman of sand, left by a careless child too near the water. In classic, beautiful Margaret Atwood style, she is comparing being dissolved as a woman of sand by water to what time does to us. So the word choices in there even are really evocative, and that's a very emotional statement in just one sentence. So again, I said at the beginning, focusing on words, making choices about words. Why say walk when you can say scurry, amble, stroll? And in some cases, this will lend more depth and dimension to the action or the person. Scurrying can imply nervousness, hurrying, fear. Ambling can imply, or stroll can imply peace, contemplation, things like that. Love is, oh, I loved that movie. But you know what? I cherish my children. That is a very different level of emotion that we bring to things. So when you're looking at your writing, take a moment at each word and say, does that word, is it specific enough to add another layer of meaning to what I'm trying to say? These words at the bottom here are what I'm going to leave you with. I can close my eyes and say them: is, am, are, was, were, be, being, been, has, have, had. My senior English teacher in high school had us remember those words and circle them in every piece of writing that we produced. And she had us would not allow, or you couldn't get an A, because I know we're talking about rubrics right now, but you couldn't get an A if you used any of these words. So you had to come up with more active verbs to replace these. So those were the no-no words, and I still use that list and have it memorized to this day. I don't think that they are words to be completely avoided. In fact, I just recently wrote something with the first line is three words, and the middle word is, because sometimes the simplicity of it can be impactful too. But I think the idea is just to get you to stop and consider why you're using the words you use, so that you show and don't tell. That is the end. I think that was a little more than 10 minutes. I'm sorry. Should I hand it over to Matt?
Yeah,
Okay.
sure. I am happy to go next.
All right.
So
Can you see it?
I do have a piece of writing that I need a volunteer to read with me if somebody's feeling bold today. Want to use their
I'm going to toss that to Amanda because I've been talking too much.
It's true. You do need a break. Okay, so could you pull up my slideshow if
You
wouldn't
can't
mind?
see it? Okay,
I
hold on.
can't see
Oh, okay, I apologize. Let me.
you, but not it.
There we go. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Great.
Yes. So just give me 1 second. So I sent over in the link or in the email a link to the story. They're made out of meat. Amanda, can you see that in your email? Or do you have the story?
Yes. Yes, I do. Hang on 1 second.
So when I
Okay.
start, we'll just pretend like you guys had done an opening exercise. I'll just refer to it. We don't just kind of pretend.
Did we lose Matt?
Pretend like it just happened and we're just moving on. And thank you for your responses to me, by the way. Sometimes my email, my connection goes in and out. Do you have any problem hearing me right now? Okay, cool. I got the warning on my screen. Anyways, all right, we'll start again. So welcome back. Thank you for your responses and the opening exercise. I appreciate that. As you may have guessed, today we are focusing on dialogue in stories and writing effective dialogue, writing dialogue that sort of pushes the story forward. It creates a sense of conflict and advances the story. So I have brought in today a unique piece that I like a lot. Have either of you ever written a piece of writing that was almost exclusively dialogue? No exposition, just totally dialogue. Is this something you've done before? Okay, I see some people have some exercise, some experience in that. The piece that I like a lot is They're Made Out of Meat by Terry Bison. This is a quick short story. Have either of you read this before? Okay, perfect. So I find that it's entertaining, it's silly, usually makes students laugh. So Amanda, you've offered to be my co-reader.
Okay.
Gonna read together. It's basically just a 1-2, 1-2, 1-2 sort of dialogue the whole time. So we'll just alternate. All right, let's start. So they're made out of meat.
Meat?
Meat. They're made out of meat.
Meat?
There's no doubt about it. We picked several from different parts of the planet, took them aboard our recon vessel, probed them all the way through. They're completely meat.
That's impossible. What about the radio signals? The messages to the stars?
They used the radio waves to talk, but the signals don't come from them. The signals come from machines.
So who made the machines? That's who we want to contact.
They made the machines. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Meat made the machines.
That's ridiculous. How can meat make a machine? You're asking me to believe in sentient meat.
I'm not asking you, I'm telling you. These creatures are the only sentient race in the sector, and they're made out of meat.
Maybe they're like the Orphalai, a carbon-based intelligence that goes through a meat stage.
Nope. They're born meat and they die meat. We studied them for several of their lifespans, which didn't take too long. Do you have any idea the lifespan of meat?
Spare me. Okay, maybe they're only part meat, like the Weddellei, a meat head with an electron plasma brain inside.
Nope, we thought of that. Since they do have meat heads like the Weddellei, but I told you, we probed them. They're meat all the way through.
No brain?
Oh, there's a brain, all right. It's just that the brain is made out of meat.
So what does the thinking?
You're not understanding me. The brain does the thinking, the meat.
Thinking meat? You're asking me to believe in thinking meat?
Yes, thinking meat, conscious meat, loving meat, dreaming meat. The meat is the whole deal. Are you getting the picture?
Oh my God, you're serious then. They're made out of meat.
Finally, yes, they are indeed made out of meat. And they've been trying to get in touch with us for almost 100 of their years.
So what does the meat have in mind?
First, it wants to talk to us. Then I imagine it wants to explore the universe, contact other sentients, swap ideas and information, the usual.
We're supposed to talk to meat?
That's the idea. That's the message they're sending out by radio. Hello, anyone out there? Anyone home? That sort of thing.
They actually do talk then. They use words, ideas, concepts.
Oh yes, except they do it with meat.
I thought you just told me they used radio.
They do, but what do you think is on the radio? Meat sounds. You know how when you slap or flap meat, it makes a noise? They talk by flapping their meat at each other. They can even sing by squirting air through the meat.
Oh my God, singing meat. This is altogether too much. So what do you advise?
Officially or unofficially?
Both.
I was officially, we are required to contact, welcome, and log in any and all sentient races or multi-beings in the quadrant without prejudice, fear, or favor. Unofficially, I advise that we erase the records and forget the whole thing.
I was hoping you would say that.
Seems harsh, but there's a limit. Do we really want to make contact with meat?
I agree 100%. What's there to say? Hello, meat. How's it going? But will this work? How many planets are we dealing with here?
Just one. They can travel to other planets in special meat containers, but they can't live on them. And being meat, they only travel through sea space, which limits them to the speed of light and makes the possibility of their ever making contact pretty slim, infinitesimal, in fact.
So we just pretend there's no one home in the universe.
That's it.
Cruel. But you said yourself, who wants to meet meat? And the ones who've been aboard our vessels, the ones you have probed, you sure they won't remember?
they'll be considered crackpots if they do. We went into their heads and smoothed out their meat so that they're just a dream, so that we're just a dream to them.
A dream to meet. How strangely appropriate that we should be a meat's dream.
And we can mark the sector unoccupied.
Good. Agreed. Officially and unofficially. Case closed. Any others? Anyone interesting on that side of the galaxy?
Yes, a rather shy but sweet hydrogen core cluster intelligence and a class 9 star in the G445 zone was in contact 2 galactic rotations ago. Wants to be friendly again.
They always come around.
And why not? How unutterably cold the universe would be if one were all alone. So this is one of my favorite pieces. This got me writing a dialogue only story early on in my writing career, and forced me out of my comfort zone to be able to convey the exposition, character development, all these different aspects that go into storytelling through a vehicle that is only dialogue. I think this is a great exercise. Can we flip to the next slide, please, Brandy? So I typed this out quickly. The question number one is to be, how does the strictly dialogue format serve the story? How would you two say it does or doesn't?
I'll jump in since Amanda's been talking. I think what is really interesting about it is it's kind of has a call and response sort of feel to it. And with the questions that the responder keeps asking, it keeps moving the information. You're building the information up with every time she's like, wait, what? Really? And you keep layering it on. And I think it moves the story forward.
Right on. So you sort of answered this question.
I guess I answered the second one. Yeah.
No, that was perfect. Amanda, do you feel like this effectively advances the story, this format?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, we got a little progression. We learned some things about the meat. We figured out what to do about it or them or
who is the meat, by the way?
You broke up a little bit. What was the last question?
I said, who is the meat, by the way?
I think it's humans.
Yeah, that's my interpretation of it. Yeah.
I think that was kind of a brilliant story. It was really funny too, because you get I'm just going to jump to your third question, because like you get the personalities of the people and the disbelief and the, kind of, oh, we don't want to deal with that. Just let the meat people go away. It's really, I want to go read it now, and that's not usually my jam. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. One of the things that strikes me the hardest is if we are to assume that we are the meat, the descriptions of the meat are we're seen as so fragile to them. Mm-hmm. We're seen as incapable of really surviving anywhere outside of our little blue earth and stuff. And I think that comes across, when they talk about having, there's some beings that have a hydrogen core cluster brain, and there's some beings that are, metallic, we'll say. But yeah, I feel like it paints a pretty clear picture of humans, the meat. So in thinking about dialogue, I think that it is effective to try to apply it to things that aren't necessarily people, to play with an unusual object. So in the next slide, I have some common objects, and I want you to think about, if these objects could talk, what would they say? I want you all to pick one and tell me what they would say.
I'll pick the dog, because I have had 3 dogs. I only have 2 now, but the one I don't have anymore was a beagle, kind of like that hound dog. And I used to use I have voices for all my dogs because I make them talk, because I'm crazy like that. Yeah. So my beagle was always wanting food, and she had a really potty mouth, and I would be like, bitch, get me my dinner.
Yes, yes, yes.
I feel like I can't follow that. I can't follow that. I'm
Yeah,
only
yeah,
thinking
yeah,
about
yeah.
the French press, but like I'm hot and why are you always pressing on me? I mean, that's all I can think
I
of.
love that. That's fantastic.
Excellent, excellent. I mean, I think there's a lot of another thing I like about they're made out of meat is the humor, and you mentioned that, Brandy, and I think that it is the silliness of it is helpful in pulling new writers out of their shell a little bit and getting them to maybe be a little weird, be a little creative. So on the next slide, I have a prompt for you, and this is a bring home prompt for after class. But I want you to write a dialogue only scene between two inanimate objects. For example, your phone and your backpack, or a toaster and a refrigerator. And I want this conversation to tell a story. So when we meet the next time, I expect to read some responses. I expect some shares for this story. And that is all that I have for you today.
Awesome. I'm going to stop sharing now, if that's okay.
Yes.
That's fine. I have nothing to share.
Okay. I'm sure you have a lot to share. Just not to-
Okay, let me just adjust my screen a tiny bit here. Okay. So, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the third lesson of our day. I'd like to start with a couple details about my daughter. She's 15. If you can imagine her, she's tall, very beautiful, long wavy brown hair, pretty blue eyes, always has mascara on, except when it's running in these crazy rivulets down her cheeks because there's some drama that has erupted. But she's pretty talented in art, and she's in an art class right now. It's kind of a mixed age class, kind of like you are a mixed age class. So she's one of the youngest ones, one of the least experienced, but talented in art. So she goes in every day for the first month, and the assignment every day is draw figures, and so 1 to 2 classmates pick a pose, and all the students draw them. They take 15 seconds to 10 minutes to draw these figures. Now, if you can imagine, in 15 seconds with a piece of charcoal, you can actually get a figure on the page. It may be that makes more sense in art, but I think it also makes sense in writing. And I think there are things that you can do in 15 seconds or a minute to practice your craft. So I want you to believe that with me today, okay? Even if it doesn't sound plausible initially. And I want you to close your eyes and imagine that you're on a train. And suddenly you see a friend, and the friend comes up to you and says, Brandy, what was the most exciting thing that happened to you in the last week? What do you think you'd talk about?
I sold my house on Sunday.
Oh my God, see, that's perfect. And
Thank you.
I would like you now to think about, we're gonna do this in just a minute. Matt, I'm gonna ask you, what's the most exciting thing that comes to mind from the last week?
I imagine that I am on an exciting trip because I'm on a train. So I am picturing that I am probably somewhere far off.
Okay. So if this were our real 10-minute class with our many imaginary classmates, we would take 1 minute to describe this exciting event in your life. And many of the things that we learned just now in the previous 2 lessons could guide us in thinking about how to convey the excitement of this event or this moment. I liked the idea that we're always thinking about, are we using the most powerful words? I think that is a really good thing to keep in mind. And when we think about moving things forward with showing, not telling, or dialogue, speaking, not describing. These are tips that you can keep in mind when you're trying to write something really short and fast to keep it very powerful. So that was just kind of a little bit of a warm up your brain exercise. You all know that this is a class on memoir. So to start, I just want to, I want to have you tell me what you think the difference between memoir and autobiography is, if someone would like to volunteer.
I
Is it-
think, oh, go ahead, Matt.
Oh, I just, my brief understanding is that a memoir focuses more on a very specific moment in a person's life, whereas an autobiography is sort of the full scope of their experiences.
I think that's a great answer. Brandy, is that where you were going?
Kind of. I was also going to say that with a memoir, I always think of an autobiography as being slightly perhaps more objective, more of a report, versus a memoir. I assume it will be shaded with the author's point of view, more of an emotional point of view. That's how I think about it. I don't know if that's actually accurate, but
I think both of those things are very helpful. I mean, often memoir focuses on one kind of period, event, or even a theme. And I think it's extremely spot on as well that, you know, autobiography, it has a little bit more of the historical, and it is often, there's the aim to be objective, I think. Whereas with memoir, you can be quite emotional and allow yourself to really tread it, bring your reader along on that emotional journey. So I wanted to read you the beginning of a memoir. This is about 20 years old. This is Anthony Bourdain's Kitchen Confidential. Tragically, he committed suicide a few years ago, but this was a bit of an explosive book in the world of kitchens and restaurants and food. But he starts out in childhood, and very often that's a great place to start with a memoir. He writes, "My first indication that food was something other than a substance one stuffed in one's face when hungry, like filling up at a gas station, came after 4th grade in elementary school. It was on a family vacation to Europe on the Queen Mary in the cabin class dining room. There's a picture somewhere. My mother in her Jackie O sunglasses, my younger brother and I in our painfully cute cruise wear, boarding the big Cunard ocean liner, all of us excited about our first transatlantic voyage, our first trip to my father's ancestral homeland, France. It was the soup. It was cold." So I know you didn't read that yourselves. You only had to absorb it with my voice, but what struck you in that passage to begin with?
that Anthony Bourdain came from a family that would take the Queen Mary. Like it's so out of character for him.
Kind of bougie, yes. I
Kind of
can see that.
bougie, yeah.
How about you, Matt?
His shock at the soup.
That's yeah. That's what struck me, I think, most when I read it. Especially for Americans, soup is usually hot, so quite strange to have it be cold. And we have in this beginning, we have a first time experience, and that is also often a good way to orient oneself in thinking about memoir. What is the first time that something in particular struck you, and then how did that maybe carry through the rest of your experiences or other times in your life. So I want to look at one more opening, and this is from a book that just came out last month, but it's gotten a lot of good press. Javier Zamora's Solido, a memoir. And so this is a story of, also begins in childhood, when Zamora left El Salvador as a child to come to the United States. So the book begins with the time marker in 1999, and here's how it goes. Trip. My parents started using that word about a year ago. One day you'll take a trip to be with us, like an adventure, like the one Simba goes on before he comes home. Around that time, they sent me Aladdin, Jurassic Park, and The Lion King alongside a Panasonic VHS player for my 8th birthday. Trip, they say now, as I'm talking to them at Baker's, where Abuelita Nelly, Grandpa, and I go to call them. We don't have a phone at home, but we do have a color TV, a brand new fridge, and a fish tank. Javiercita, Abuelita Nelly waves her hand at me. She's always called me that. I think my nickname, Chapita, reminds her too much of what the town calls Grandpa, Don Chepe. Your parents say you'll be with them Soon, Abuelita says and smiles, showing off her 2 top middle teeth lined in gold. Her dimples dig deeper into her round face. Tia Molly, who also has a round face, isn't here because she's working at the clinic. She and Abuelita have been using the word more and more. Trip this, trip that, trip, trip, trip. I can feel the trip in the soles of my feet. I see it in my dreams. So what do you find interesting about that opening?
I love the description of his home. They don't have a phone, but they have a fish tank and a color TV. And I also really thought it was interesting the way his parents seem to be trying to indoctrinate him into American culture with the Disney videos.
Matt, how about you?
I love the repetition of the word trip. Every time it seems to like double its impact on the story and the narrative, I should say.
Yeah, I like that. I like that the way you put that with repetition, that it doubles the impact and every time.
Yeah.
And it's I like that. The word trip, it evokes so much, you know, a hero's journey, upheaval, anticipation, anxiety, excitement. So it's a great word to repeat as well. We also find some interesting information in that opening about names. And that's where I'd like us to end today's class, but to think about, you know, what you're going to bring in for next week. First of all, I want you to close your eyes and just say your own name to yourself a couple times, your full name, however many names you have. And then I want you to think about your name. You know, think about, is it a family name? If so, you know, what's the family story, the family connection? What does your name mean, if you know? Do you like it? Why or why not? Do you feel like it fits you? Why or why not? Do you feel like it helps you understand your life? And then what does meditating on your name make you think about? You know, what themes does it bring to mind? What particular events in your life do you connect it to? So to begin your activity for next week, I want you to, you know, write down my name is, and then you fill in your blank, and think about some of the elements that we just saw in these 2 openings. I'd like you to come in next week with something that's about 2 to 3 pages long, that tells a piece of your story focused on your name. And next week we'll come together and workshop your stories.
Sounds good.
Awesome.
All right, guys.
Okay. Thank you.
I will start with a tiny bit of feedback. At the beginning, I said I had no handout, and that was because when I looked at this, I thought, what would I possibly put on a handout? But then I found you 2 just did that so well, both of you, that I could totally see what I would have put on a handout. And I think it would have been, it would have enhanced the effectiveness of the communication, especially in this, you know, in this Zoom world. So I feel like, you know, definitely in this class, I'm learning so much from what the fellow students are always doing and thinking, and with you 2, that was absolutely the case. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think if you live in the corporate world at all, that's kind of all you do all day. Show PowerPoints. So I really liked, Amanda, how you started with something personal. I think as a teacher, my style would be to be personal. I don't think I have another mode, honestly. Like, I don't have a formal mode. And I think that was really great with the analogy with your daughter. It added dimension to who you are and part of your life, especially considering that you went and you talked about memoirs. So I thought that was really nice. And Matt, I love the way you captured attention at the beginning of your piece. That was brilliant to have. So it became a play. It wasn't just reading dialogue. It became a play, and it really brought to life how important and powerful dialogue can be. So I really appreciated that.
Thank you. Brandy, I loved the focus on words. It spoke directly to the part of my brain that is rushing and rushing and rushing. And I felt like your lecture was like this like reminder of like, no, you need to calm down, and like every one of these words is something, you know, you're neatly assembling something, and you're doing it with love and care. And I think that that's so good for especially like intro writers to you know, pump the brakes a little bit and really think about putting together, you know, bit by bit, brick by brick, the words in your story. I definitely did get to the end of your lecture and think to myself, like, fuck, like, am I like, am I using these words too much? So I will be writing that list down and taking a look at my stuff afterwards. Amanda, I would say that I wouldn't stress about not having something multimedia. I had this from a teaching residency a couple of years ago, so I kind of just pulled it apart and put something back together. I personally feel like for me, like I have to see something. I can't just like listen to somebody talk. Like my brain just won't absorb the information as much, and so I find that slides are just a really easy way to do that. But I liked your exercise. I liked, you know, being mindful and like sitting there and closing your eyes and like trying to envision that scene and you know, like the significance of that and what we would tell other people. I think that you did it in a way that was like great for meditating on the importance of the words and whatnot.
I really like the eyes closed too, because I think it makes you, it kind of does what I was talking about in that process of a word through your brain and then a visualization of it. So I really enjoyed that.
And the Bourdain quote was, I wanted to say this, it didn't come to me as fast, but I love that. I love the usage of it. And then I like the, he figures out that food is something more than something you just eat. But when he hits that realization, it's not like, it's cold soup, you know, it's not something that like is overtly like exciting, but that's the catalyst. And so I thought that that was a great way of, or that was a great excerpt to bring in to illustrate your point.
Yeah, that's a cool opening. Matt, I really liked your choice of that story, which I did not know, because as you kind of unpacked it at the end, it was clear that there were some larger, interesting ideas, but it was also just kind of quite entertaining. And I feel like that's just a really great way to get students to listen and to think about kind of the playfulness and power of language. You know, if you can give them something like that, that maybe many of them won't know, but they'll kind of find instantly entertaining. I think that was really a good choice.
I wish I had done a better job at the end of being more prescriptive about the assignment for next week. My intention, I think I kept watching the clock and was like, okay, I should be done by now. But my intention was to have someone have the class bring in a piece of writing and circle those words and offer different words. But I wasn't specific enough about that. So I thought you guys both crafted really nice assignments, especially yours, Amanda, because Matt's heard me say this before. I hate my name. Absolutely hate my name. And so, yeah. And so that would be such a powerful exercise for me to do, because it would dive very much into my history and my background as to why I don't like my name. So
Hey, Brandy, at least you're not a Matt Smith.
That's a great name. The doctor. Do people call you the doctor?
I used to, yeah. Well, it became cooler after 2011.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
yeah, it's just so like meh. It's just common.
Classic.
Yeah.
Classic. Yeah. Classic.
Yes. I appreciate that feedback. I do wish I had given y'all some more better questions. That's one thing I would definitely beef up if I did this lesson again. I would more probing questions, specific stuff. I think there's a lot of like stuff that grabs people right on the surface from this story that I would have liked to have gotten a little bit better. I would, you know, in how I quizzed y'all, but yeah. just self-criticism. sort of.
Yeah, I think nobody's perfect. That's the whole point, right?
Yeah,
Is we have to keep figuring it out. Okay, well, I will post this recording. Thank you guys for doing this.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was excited to see you both in my group. So,
Me
Yeah.
too. Yeah. Terrific.
all right,
All right.
talk
Have a
soon.
great evening.
You
Bye.
too. Bye.
Right.